What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Passionate DJ Podcast. I'm your host, David Michael, and the weather is not so great today, so joining me remotely is Trip Turlington and Tony DeCero. How you guys doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Good.
Yeah, thanks for jumping in. It was getting a little sketchy out there, so we're trying this online call thing to answer these questions that we've got from some of our listeners from the Facebook community group, which you can get to by going to passionatedj.com/community. We did an Ask Me Anything post and said, hey, anything you want to know, post them here, and we'll respond to them on the show. And so here we are. And so I just want to go ahead and jump right into it. Those of you watching on the YouTube audience, you'll be able to see us talking here and see the questions here on the screen. You can join us at youtube.com/passionatedj. You fellas ready to do this?
Let's go.
Yes, sir.
All right. So here is the first question. This comes from Giacomo R. He says, vinyl, we're seeing a strong return of the physical support for the music. For a beginner DJ, is it still worth it? Does it still represent an added value from the point of view of club managers, people, fans, etc.? So what do you guys think? Is it worth it for a new DJ to get into vinyl?
In my opinion, I think a DJ should always learn from vinyl. It's the hardest form. It's the beginning steps of DJing. As far as a club manager, I don't think they give two pisses or a fart.
Agreed.
You think they should, just to clarify, you think they should learn vinyl? Or did you mean that you think they should start with vinyl even before touching?
Learn. They start how they start. Vinyl is obviously a pretty penny, with all things included. But I think eventually they should, yes.
I think that's where I'm at with it. Like, I think it's still a very relevant and worthwhile thing to learn, just because it is, like Tony mentioned, it's the fundamentals of it, right? Like, I mean, it doesn't get any more raw than two pieces of wax and a mixer, and you bringing those two things together. But as a new DJ, I would be far more impressed with somebody who is able to learn the fundamentals in whatever way that they can, and then maybe branch out into vinyl or what's the finger drumming or whatever, the more advanced or whatever branch you want to go out to. I mean, we've talked about it before where, is beat matching a necessity?
Right.
Not from a manual standpoint. Like that's just not where DJing is anymore. Is it a worthwhile thing? Absolutely.
That's exactly where I land. That was exactly the parallel I was going to draw. It's really easy to talk about mixing vinyl and beat matching in the same paragraph here.
Right.
And yeah, same thing. It's a worthwhile pursuit for sure because it lets you learn the music in a do I want to say more intimate way that you just don't get when you're hitting the sync button. I mean, There's just a certain sort of organic flow to the way that music manually moves and adjusting it with your hands and all that kind of stuff that, I don't know, it just gives you a context that I think you don't otherwise get.
I would, it's pretty hard too, because vinyl and turntables are just not as accessible as they used to be.
Right.
Not everybody has them. I mean, back in the day, I don't want to say every DJ, but 90% of the people that played out had a set of Tech 12s and a mixer and 12 inches. Now, it's rare to see turntables in people's houses unless they've had them from the past.
It's hard to justify buying them when nobody else has them. So it's kind of like, where else are you going to do this vinyl thing? But yeah, it's almost like a solo pursuit at this point.
Yep.
I would definitely say if you have the opportunity to and the access to turntables, yeah, definitely learn.
Yep, same.
Okay, let's move on to our next question from Jackson F. See if I can I'm going to get this off the screen here. This is specifically for Tony. How do you figure out what you're willing to pay when you're booking talent? I've heard rough numbers like 50% of expected ticket sales. Is there any insight to guidelines such as that? It would be appreciated. Tony, what do you think? How do you figure out what you're willing to pay some incoming talent for a big show? Or any show?
Well, first of all, I have to look at it like I'm a D market. I'm not a major market, so there's no way I can pay what New York City or Miami or LA or Chicago pay for a DJ. I have to look at how many tickets that DJ I think can sell me. Can he sell me 400 tickets at $20? Can he sell me 400 tickets at $30? Dayton's kind of a small market, so but when I go into the booking, I have to look at it like if I spend 10 grand on an artist, I'm going to have another at least $1,500 in additional costs. So 11.5 would be my overall. Will I be able to sell 11.5 worth of tickets? Now, if I do that, that's not going to equate to the time that I put into throwing the show either. So do I want to pay myself? There's a lot of things I take into consideration. There's some, there are some deals that you can do when you do book DJs, because some of these DJs and agents know that the artist is going to sell out an event, if it's 3 to a 5,000 capacity venue and that artist is, consistently selling out those type of venues. There's sometimes where the artist will take 90% of ticket sales, but there's a million ways to do it, but I won't ever go into a deal giving 50% of my ticket sales away. There's no way. I have way too many additional costs and hours promoting the show and paying for openers, hotel rooms, food, writer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
My wife's a realtor, and whenever she's kind of looking at how to put a price on a house, she looks at comps. She looks at comparable houses in the area and says, okay, this one's very similar to this property and it sold for this much, and they use that to come to some conclusion. But when it comes to an event like this, setting prices is very locale specific. And like you said, to your point, in Dayton, you can't charge the same you would charge for New York or whatever. So are you really just flying blind? Because if you have a bunch of comps in your area, it's probably not worth bringing them here. You know what I mean? If somebody's been here 5 times in the past year, then that's a lot of data to work with, but it's just going to trend down. So
right.
Are you flying blind? Do you try to look at other like comparable markets that are further away? How do you aim that, or do you just have a feel for that because you've done this for so long?
I just have a feel for it because I've done it for so long. I just know that let me think of an artist Eric Prydz.
Okay.
We'll put Eric Prydz in Columbus. Eric Prydz will put 1,000 people in a building that'll probably spend, $30 a ticket and spend hefty numbers on alcohol because it's a very big VIP market as well. People love the bottle service.
Yeah.
So if I was to have him here in Dayton, I think I'd have a good turnout, but would I get 1,000 people? I highly doubt it. Will I be able to rely on $20,000 worth of VIP bottle sales and ticket sales in Dayton? I highly doubt it. So I have to look at it as I can't even compare Columbus to the market. I mean, Dayton is a D market. It's a very small market, but we do, the club that we have and the few names that we've brought has helped us be able to obtain other names. But I just go into it blind to pretty much answer your question. I try and get a good guesstimate. There's times where I know I've overpaid for a couple artists, but yeah. I mean, you live and learn.
Yeah, I guess you just have to learn to probably trust yourself. Like, hey, I've done this a number of times. I have a record that shows I can do it right this amount of time, and you give yourself a margin of error, and because you're never going to get it right 100% of the time, obviously. So it's somewhere between educated guessing and analyzing past data, I suppose.
Yeah, and knowing the fact that those artists have never played this market, and they want to dip into another market where they haven't to get their name out, and sometimes they'll play the market for a cheaper price just to do that. So yeah. I take that into consideration as well sometimes.
We'll go to the next question here. This one comes from Jordan R. He says he wants to hear my views on the new Akai Force. Is it a game changer? Can I trash my Mac yet? Now, he later posted in the comments, sorry, I saw you just covered this in the AM episode. You hadn't watched it yet. But I'll go ahead and answer this one really quickly. The Akai Force is really cool. I didn't get a lot of hands-on time with it. I got to like feel it, push the buttons. You know, it's really high quality, looks great, it's glossy, it's a great finish. It's all the things. It looks really neat. It makes really great sounds, and it's really nice to have something that's seems comparable to like my machine studio that's in the background, but is an entirely standalone hardware unit. So, you know, standalone was really a theme at NAMM this year. It's really a theme in the hardware industry when it comes to DJing and production.
Finally,
people are interested in getting out of the top game. So, it looks really awesome. I wish I could give a better answer as far as like, you know, I haven't spent an hour creating tunes on it or anything, but I saw some really freaking cool tech demos, and hit up that YouTube channel if you want to see more of those. I don't know if you guys checked out the Akai Force at all. If you have any thoughts on that,
I haven't checked it out.
it's pretty cool. You guys should. It's pretty neat. It's more of like somewhere in between production and DJing, like I said, kind of like the machine studio. So I bet Trip would have a lot of fun with it as a DJ producer type.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I haven't had a chance to check it out yet, but I've played around with a lot of Akai stuff. I mean, it just goes without saying that their build quality is amazing. I still have the Push One, which was actually for Ableton, that was actually made by Akai before Ableton took over their own production. So, yeah, no, I really do like that everything is starting to finally listen to all of our gripes over the years. You know, can I ditch my laptop? Can I ditch my laptop?
Right.
So it's nice that they're starting to listen.
All right. Are you guys ready to get real for a second?
Oh boy.
I didn't do it.
Right.
This next one comes from Cory S. He says, production of this show, is there a profit in there, or is it completely a labor of love? What makes you do what you do? How much would you say you've invested in the show since day one? Should I start, or do you guys want to jump in on that one?
You go ahead and start, because I think from your position, you've got the most insight from this point of view, because Passionate DJ is so much more than just this show.
Yeah, you've had more time invested.
Okay. So,
but I would like to augment it.
Okay, sure. Is there a profit in there? We do sell merch. We're creating advertising packages. We do have Patreon. We do affiliate marketing. We're pretty much open on all the ways that we try to monetize this show. As far as the word profit, that's going to depend on how you define that. Have we made more money than has been invested? I'd say that's a pretty hard no. So yes, it is a labor of love for sure. However, it cannot remain entirely a labor of love if we want to grow it beyond where we're at. So we are making a really hard push to try to find ways to monetize the show in a way that lets us keep doing, keep Passionate DJ what it is, and keep giving the listeners what it is that you guys like from our show, from the YouTube channel, from the articles, and trying to find, all that kind of stuff. And, how can we turn these into, useful informational products, or, how can we sell, space to advertisers that align with our values? We're having a lot of discussions right now in that vein, because 2018, we did a lot of cool stuff. We, made a lot of great episodes. We built out the YouTube channel. We grew a lot, but we had a lot of struggles. It was really hard to just donate all this time to this thing. And so this is a constant topic of discussion amongst me and the guys here. And I hope I'm not oversharing there, but I like to be transparent about that stuff. Yeah. What makes you do what you do? So Passionate DJ's been around since 2013, 2014. It's because we're passionate about DJing. I mean, I know that's a really simple answer, but I don't want to speak for the guys, but I love DJing. I love creating content. Only makes sense to create content about DJing. It basically comes down to that. It gives me an outlet very similar to DJing itself to I always say word vomit out a bunch of stuff that somebody out there seems to want to listen to. And so there's something therapeutic in that, being able to get behind this microphone and talk to you guys and have somebody listen and seem to care really fulfills me personally. And then the final part was, how much would you say you've invested into the show? Oh, man. It's really hard to say on that one because it's been going on for so long and some of it's kind of blurry, right? Like how much of this is a passionate DJ expense and how much of this is just me buying something. Like I bought a pretty expensive MacBook recently, which I bought because I needed it for video editing for a passionate DJ, but I also use it for everything. So that being said, thousands. I mean, we've got headsets, we've got mixers. I don't consider all the DJ gear that we buy necessarily for our own use as a passionate DJ expense, but we do buy stuff to shoot video of them and get recordings of them. We've got microphones, XLR cables, not to mention the entire renovation I did to the studio, which cost a couple grand just to make it
to my studio when we were recording out of here. Yeah,
exactly. And I was just getting to get ready to say that the upgrades to your studio, the audio interfaces that you had to buy, the second set of mics. And so, we've all made investments like that into the show, which is another reason why we're having talks about how to monetize this while still keeping it a passion project. Yep. And that's my big spiel on it. You guys are welcome to chime in there.
I think you hit the nail on the head with all of the labor of love discussion, so I won't go too far back over that. I think, excuse me, I think coming back to what makes you do what you do, though, as somebody who's been doing this since the late 90s, I'm over 40 years old. I still love to play out and all of that stuff, but, in just about everything that I do, what I have found is that when I am good at something and when I find other people that want to be good at it or that I connect with on that level, it's a pretty cool experience to want to share that information and share my experience and try to help the next generation along, or even if it's somebody the same age as me, but it's that handoff, to help grow somebody else who is also passionate about wanting to learn. And so trying to get people up to my level or way beyond my level and just kind of knowledge sharing as we go along. That's how all of this keeps going. So, even though I might only play out half a dozen times a year, but if I can, instill something that I've learned into some kid who's playing out 3 times a week and it helps him or her get better, well, then that's all worth it to me. It's the same type of stuff that I'm hoping to pass on to my kids, regardless of what it is that they get passionate about, be willing to learn from other people and then be willing to share what you've learned with others.
That's a great answer. Anything you want to add on that one, Tony? So is there a profit? Is this a labor of love? What makes you do this? How much have you invested?
It's definitely a labor of love, as we all agree on that. What makes me do what I do? I'm on the same wave as Trip. I love sharing knowledge and the things that I know, and I've always wanted to teach people. I did it with gymnastics a long time ago, and I like to be an inspiration, and the knowledge that I can share as well from being a DJ since 1990, 91 to now managing an act, being a stage manager. Just know that I took that path, but that path led me to where I am. And these are things that I can also talk about within the DJ community because it's all relevant, I like sharing. I love sharing the knowledge that I know and the things that I've learned along the way to hopefully, help others. Invested into this, how much? I would have to honestly say, all of our knowledge combined is priceless. I can't put a dollar amount on any of that. And it doesn't bother me to share that knowledge, because it's real life knowledge that you're just not going to be able to pick up a book and read the directions to, you know? So
Right.
I feel like, you know, what we have all put into this is priceless, and, you know, we're going to keep going because we believe in this project.
And I think to piggyback on that, you know, I think when you first read that question, my mind immediately went to the financial investment, which is where you took it, David. But you know, to piggyback on Tony's point there, I mean, the amount of time that gets invested as well is this when we call this a labor of love. I mean, the amount of time that it goes into just even a 60 to 75 minute episode, you know, the amount of post-production and editing and all of that stuff that was especially going on in those early to mid episodes up until about 6 months ago, roughly.
We made
when
some
we
monetary investments to make that easier.
right. And some monetary investments as well as some workflow changes. So I think that's one of the good things about growing like we have, is that we've figured out, you know, where we need to improve and all of that. But, you know, as you're making those, as you're crawling to learn how to walk, you know, like, so, the amount of time to get to a 60-minute, we'll just call it 60 minutes. It was probably easily anywhere between, you know, what would you say, 75 to 90 minutes of recording time for each one. So the time to set everything up, and then the time to tear everything down after you've recorded that, then take it back into the studio. And then you practically have to listen to the whole thing over again. And every time you make an edit, then you got to go back and listen to make sure that you've cut and pasted everything back together. Then if you're anal retentive like me, then you've gone through and you've applied compression on every individual channel and EQing everybody so that everything sounds even, then spreading everybody out across the stereo field, and then do, you know, your final, you know, mastering and stuff like that to get to that final product. So, you know, there's a lot of time, and then that's just the production side of it. Then there's the whole planning side of it. How do we figure out what we're going to talk about?
Right.
And then, you know, trying to, you know, come up with the outlines and whatever our talking points are, and how much of it is evergreen content that we can just, you know, kind of plan it and then stick it up on the shelf, versus the stuff that, holy crap, Fire Festival just screwed over a bunch of people, we got to talk about it now. You know, so like, you know, there's all that kind of stuff that, like, it's a constant moving target, but it takes a significant investment of time as well as your money.
Okay, next up on the list, we have a question from Matthew M. I played live for over 6 hours this weekend, and there were multiple intoxicated dancers that were banging things and making so much noise that I couldn't hear in my headphones, monitor, or even hear the PA to correct the pitch during mixing. What do other DJs do when things like this are happening? You guys ever play a gig where things were so noisy and crazy around you that you couldn't even hear or concentrate?
Yes.
Mostly in house parties.
Yep.
For sure. But like in a room, like a big room, not really. I just turn the monitors up, turn my headphones.
I say either they didn't provide enough sound or security. Something's going wrong here.
Yeah, no, same. I think most of the time when something like that has happened, it's because it's either inadequate monitoring, or lack of security. So there's somebody like right there in your and all of that. But
I would have an issue, David, playing, you know, right there in your room with the monitor far over to the left side away from me and not by my ears. And when you know, we'd have 40, 50 people in the room, you know, like having a good time, drinking and talking. So yeah, it's definitely hard in that environment, but in a club environment, I don't think I've ever had that issue.
Mm-mm.
I don't think I have either.
Nope.
As far as how would I handle it? I mean, it's real easy to say, you know, just be calm and just, like, you know, take care of your stuff and be professional. But it's admittedly very tough when you've got drunk people getting crazy around your shit, right? So, I mean, that's the best I can say, is just try to keep your stuff together and know who you're going to work with in the future. You know, was this a venue issue? Was this a promoter issue? Why did this happen in the first place? Take that as a learning experience and run with that, and use that as a data point.
Yeah, because I mean, even like that sounds like it was a perfect storm, because like even in club environments that have had some shitty monitoring systems or whatever, like I've always at least been able to say, okay, I can't hear accurate information around me because there's no monitors and there's reverb and bounce back from the main system. At least I know I can put headphones on and be and I can mix in my headphones. I don't like to do that, but I can do it, and that's my go-to if I have to. But if he can't even hear in his headphones because people are so loud, like that sounds like that's a problem. I wouldn't take that gig again.
Yeah, that was exactly why I started mixing in headphones, was scenarios like that where I was like, I just couldn't, I'm not really sure. It's a little foggy. Oh, wait, this is always consistent if I have something over my ears,
Right.
If it's breaking through that, yikes.
Yeah, it becomes tricky.
All right, we've got, let's see. By the way, real quick before we move on to the next question, we just did all that talk about production quality and stuff. Are you guys getting occasional network glitches when I talk?
At the beginning I was, but I haven't in a minute.
Yeah, it's gotten better as we've gotten along.
Okay, you guys are doing that for me as well occasionally, but it's not so bad that it's unlistenable. So I just wanted to see how it was for me.
Okay.
I don't know if maybe that's just my connection here, but all right. Next up, this comes from Aaron K. I'm looking for advice on how to organize my music on USB stick without using playlists, Rekordbox, iTunes, or anything else, just by using folders and subfolders. Trip, I feel like you have input on that one. We've had some conversations about this because you and I both used to obsess over file level storage and organization of files.
Yeah.
I don't know if you still do or not.
No, I've started to, in the last few years, I've really started to trust or be more trusting of metadata, which is what all of those things use as the metadata and the ID3 tags and some XML, external XML files and stuff like that for library management. Most of them are good. There's some glitches if you like. I've ran into issues with Serato before, where if you're trying to do a mass block of 200 songs and you want to change the tag on all 200, sometimes it might miss a couple of them. But for a USB stick, I guess it just depends on how anal retentive you want to get with it. Like anymore for me, what I basically keep on my USB sticks is anything that I've played from the last 3 to 6 gigs. So, and with that, then I just break them up into, this is the stuff for main sets in one folder, so this is where I'm my go-to for, if I'm going to play techno, this is my techno folder. And then I'll have like other like or not subfolders, but like other folders in that same root. So I can have like a tech folder or a prog folder, or if I'm going drum and bass, then I can go, neurofunk or, tech step and stuff like that. And, kind of break things out that way. But then outside of that, I mean, that's pretty much all I really do. Just kind of have genre folders. And then just dump everything in that. But again, that's because I've been using Rekordbox a lot more for library management. So when I plug into a set of CDJs, like that's all I need to do is pull up a playlist.
I would say my perspective on this, like I said, I used to be really particular about my file naming schemes and all this kind of stuff, and I still am in certain situations. But as far as it relates to music, basically the only time I buy or acquire music files anymore is for the purpose of DJing. And so for everything else, I'm using Spotify, or it's something that I already had from way back in the day as an MP3 file, or maybe it's a DJ set or something that's not available on Spotify, something like that, a recording, independent release from a friend, whatever. Have that stuff. But I can't say I've done a great job of organizing it. But when I used to really obsess over this, I strictly went I think I organized by folder the artist, and then I put inside those folders, I would put the artist name, space, hyphen, space, track title, .mp3 or whatever. And I didn't get any fancier than that because I found that if I would try to break it into anything more specific or try to categorize stuff, then I'm just adding a whole nother layer of convolution to my process. And then I'm like, is this deep house, or is this like deep techno, or is this like techie dub, blah, 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 whatever. And I didn't want to get lost in that when I'm organizing thousands of files.
Right.
But now that I'm only really getting new music files for the purpose of DJing, I dump it into my DJ software and do what I'm going to do with it in Tractor or Rekordbox or whatever. When I finally get to the point of like dusting off all my old hard drives that have old shit on it and putting it all in one place, honestly, anymore, I'll probably put it in some kind of library management thing like iTunes, because who wants to do that after a while? I mean, it just gets ridiculous, whether you're using, renaming macros or programs to help you out or anything. It's so tedious anymore. It's so 1997. There are better ways to do it. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. And that's talk about a flash from the past, man. So I did the same thing, but I had two different ways of going about my folder management. And I had my not stuff that I'm DJing and stuff that I'm DJing. So like all of my like listening, everything else that I would never ever play out. So like all of my rock, all of my alternative, all of my rap, all of that kind of stuff. At the root, I would have, those very broad genres. So rock, alternative, rap, whatever. And then once you got into there, then I would do artist. And then once you get into the artist, then I would put the year, space, then the album name, and then down in there, then have them all, track number space Tony,
all the stuff that ID3 tags and metadata was invented to
right fit. exactly. So for all of my DJing stuff, it was always just because I didn't ever want to go into that. So I had folders for all of my genres. And I never got too specific. I had like techno, tech house, progressive, trance, drum and bass, breaks, so just I kept my genres pretty broad. And then once you're in there, then it was just artist name, space, hyphen, space, track name. And then if it was a remix of any kind, it was in parentheses afterward. And then that's just how I managed those. Because to your point, like for stuff that I'm DJing out, I'm trying to find it and find it quick. So if I know my music, then, I know who something is by and what the track name is and stuff like that. But anymore, I can't see myself doing it. I don't have the time for that. And library management has gotten really good at it.
I use mostly Tractor all the time. The last, I'd say 3 times that I played on CDJs, it was just techno, tech house, and progressive. And in each one, it would have lighter and darker. And that was it. I knew my light stuff was more, melody driven, atmospheric, and my darker stuff was, my more underground, darker, minimal.
But there's no particular method to your madness as far as the files that are outside of Tractor or Rekordbox. Like you just
outside of Tractor and Rekordbox, I'm like a fucking hoarder. But no, I have a music folder, and then music I have year. So I have 2019, 2018, 2017, 2016, and then within the year the genres.
Gotcha.
But when I'm going to play a gig, I'll either download new music before the gig, or if it's music that I already have that I feel is, I put it in the appropriate folder. But on the USB drive when I'm playing out, it's pretty simple. It's just the three genres that I normally play anyway, when I play a gig, and lighter, darker.
so my whole process now is like, yeah, what I do now is in a music folder on my PC. I just, I have the date that I make the purchase and all of the songs that, come in from that date. So, if today is the 3rd, so,
303, buddy.
All right.
Yeah.
So, happy 303. So if I make, purchases today, that's what goes into that folder. Then I take those, I run them through Platinum Notes, and then I dump everything that's been compressed by Platinum Notes in one Platinum Notes folder, and then library management does the rest. So for somebody who's looking for that, like, intentional file management from a human, you don't want to see mine anymore. Like you said, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was very much that guy. I would sit there for hours, scrubbing through tracks, but not anymore.
I must have lost weeks of my life doing that. Like once you realize that, you're like, wait a second. Like, people invented things to solve this problem.
Right.
All right, next question comes from Adam C. Where's the line between being pushy and asking for help? As a newer DJ, I've been asking friends and fellow DJs to listen to mixes. Just want to revisit some best practices for breaking into the scene to get behind the decks in the club. The line between being pushy and asking for help, specifically relating to the, like, listen to my mix, give me feedback, come to my show. Where's the line between being pushy and asking for help? Well, I think that's going to vary, obviously, depending on the relationship with the person that you're interacting with, right? So, maybe grandma's going to listen to your mix, but Bob, who you met once at a bar, is going to be annoyed if you ask him more than twice, right? So, I don't know, kind of try to pick up on social cues. If somebody's getting annoyed,
the closer you are to the person, the more pushier you can be. I had a guy add me on Facebook a few weeks ago, and we had a lot of mutual friends. So I was like, I accepted the request, and I it takes me a while to accept requests because I have so many in there. I accepted this one, and as soon as I accepted it, I got a message with a YouTube video.
Yeah.
And I looked at it, I watched the video, I didn't respond to it, and then 3 weeks later, I got another message with a YouTube video. Well, then I went back to Facebook and hit unfriend.
Yeah.
Yeah, got to remember that it's all about the relationship that you have with people. So if what you're looking for is an inner circle of people that you can have, so that you can get some constructive feedback on how that mix is, and how to make it better, or how to get it out to the right people. That's all about your relationships with those people. So, like to Tony's point there, you don't want to just throw YouTube or SoundCloud links into somebody's inbox. You want to try to develop some sort of a relationship, and then let that be something that comes up as part of that relationship, and something that you can pass off in casual conversation. It's not to say that you can't throw links out to people, but what you don't want to do is become pushy because somebody you barely know or only know of is not listening to your shit. So my advice there is to find that a tight-knit circle of people that you do not only get feedback from, but that you can actually contribute some feedback to, because there's nothing better than people who are trying to make each other better. So trying to so if you're looking for feedback and you get somebody who actually listens and will provide that feedback to you, then make sure that you are available to provide feedback to that person as well, so that it becomes a give and take relationship.
Sometimes too, keep in mind that everybody is constantly busy all the time, so not a lot of people have time to listen to the mix. I mean, even my best friend Brian in Florida, God love him. He sent me a mix, and he probably had to send me a reminder 3 or 4 different times. Like, yo, did you listen to my mix? Oh man, my bad. I forget, but he's my homie, so yeah.
Yep.
All right. And then part of the question here was just want to revisit some best practices for breaking into the scene to get behind the decks in the club. And we probably have entire episodes dedicated to that now, but anybody want to give a couple pointers, best practices for getting early gigs?
Yep.
Find your local promoter that's doing local nights.
Yep. And making sure that you're building that relationship with them and going to their shows and showing that support, whether or not you're on the bill or not. One of the best ways to show that early support or show that support when you're early on is to go and don't even bring up the fact that you're a DJ. Don't even bring up the fact that you're looking for gigs. Just make your face known. Just show up. And as you're building those relationships with the people that you're trying to get gigs from, then, you'll find those more ample opportunities and more appropriate places to drop that nugget. Oh, here, by the way, I play too.
Next up, we have one from Scott C. What do you do when you hit a long bridge? Continue working on your beat matching and EQ, take a break, look forward to possible tracks down the line. I occasionally find myself frustrated just waiting for the track to kick back in. So long breakdowns and bridges.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I quit playing trance. I mean, because we've joked around about it before, but especially as trance kind of started waning in popularity in our area, that was one of the biggest things is that I'm carrying around, these record bags that, hold anywhere from 80 to 100, 120 records. And I'm just cramming this stuff in there so I can plan for whatever. But then when I actually get to a gig, I'm playing 10 records. 8 to 10 records, So it was and that was always the frustrating part. And as a younger DJ, a newer DJ, that's why I got the reputation that I did for hitting the flanger button as much as I did. Because you get bored. You're just sitting there and you're like, all right, how can I do something or look busy or look cool or whatever? Because if I've already got, 3-4 records, down the line, as I've turned around, I've got plenty of time. Oh, well, maybe I'll play this one. Maybe I'll play this one. Maybe I'll play this one. So turn around in my record bag and I've got all these, sleeves popped up. Well, hell, I've planned for 3 more sets.
It was also back then a lot harder to throw on a record, and you'd have to work the pitch a little bit to get your record right. To where now you look at a screen, 125 BPM, you put your pitch control or hit the sync button. So now there's next to no planning time. You don't have to do any of that.
Right.
And this problem is worst for people who have the smallest crowds, right? Because if you're standing in front of 10 people doing nothing for a minute and a half, you look even worse than you do if there's 300 adoring fans, because at least somebody's like, woo, giving you the hands air thing or something is happening, hopefully.
Right.
So, for me, my best answer to that is deck D. And what I mean is I almost always have a 3rd or 4th deck that I have something in that has some, usually I want to make sure it has some kind of percussive tops in it, like open hi-hats and things, just a little bit of something that's got a little bit of a groove to it. And that's almost as a DJ tool, whether it's a full track or even just a loop or something, because when you're in a situation like that too, you have a long breakdown like that, and then what's worse than you not knowing what to do is your crowd not knowing what to do with that time. So at least as long as there's something percussive happening, if you had dancers, they still have a ticking tempo to dance to. You know what I mean? There's just a little bit more of that top-end energy there. So I almost always have something like that offhand. That doesn't necessarily tell you what you should be doing in the meantime, but it helps a little bit with that awkwardness.
I do the same thing, with the loops, adding that percussion. So it's not such a huge breakdown. Not with every track though, because you want something to break down, to kind of.
Yeah. Part of that is just, so I'm going to echo both of you and say that in addition to that, sometimes you don't want like a full percussive element going, at full like EQ volume or whatever. So sometimes it's nice to take like those percussive elements or a loop or something like that, and then add some color or add some light effects to it. So whether it's like a little bit of reverb or some sort of a delay, and then take out like the top end and just kind of give some sort of like a chunky undertone or something, but gives you something to play with during that time, makes you look busy and feel busy, but it gives you something to actually still add to the mix. But conversely, I mean, at the same time, music is music. It's written the way that it's written, I think David just said you can't do that all the time. So sometimes it's just a matter of being patient and letting the music do what it does, and just kind of reading your crowd and trying to feel that out and make some sort of a connection. So whether it's fingers in the air or something, but or
it's
or turn around and take a drink of your vodka. I don't know.
It is definitely the hardest thing for a dancer on the dance floor to do something without a beat.
Correct.
Yeah, you're stuck with them staring at you or not dancing. We did. You remember when we had Sasha at the Red Cheetah in 2000? And I'll never forget it. They had dancers, go-go dancers on each side, and it was typically a top 40 club. But when the music would break down, they had no idea what to do. So they just kind of stood there, just like, what do I do? So
he's playing Expander, and they're all just standing around confused.
So sometimes it's good to add like a small percussive element, like it at about half volume.
Yeah,
right.
Track to not over
maintain energy.
Yep.
All right, this next one comes from Christopher L. What was the longest set you prepared for, and how do you prepare for sets? Now, we just posted an interview with Mr. Turlington here about preparing for sets, so I'm sure he'll have some input on that, and then we can refer you to that episode. As far as the longest set you prepared for, I'll jump in on that. I would say the longest sets that I play, I don't prepare for. So if I'm playing for 10 hours, I'm not planning that shit out, for example. That would be like a house party with buddies overnight kind of situation. Longest set I've quote unquote professionally planned for, I would say maybe 5 or 6 hours. And that would be like a mobile gig. And by preparing, it's like, okay, I have some stuff in this category and some stuff in this category, and this BPM is close to this BPM, and I've got them in little buckets, and I've got a sound that I know this crowd's going to like. So it's prepared in that sense, but it's not like this track goes into this track and goes into this track. As far as like David, the artist, I rarely play a set longer than an hour or two out anywhere. So I guess that would be my answer there. Anybody ever playing for any really long sets?
No.
Not a long set, but I'll go back to 2012 when I was in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico with Prime Social Group, and they throw a festival called Electro Beach down there, and every night was a headliner, so it's like college spring break down there, and every club that was going on, we had a headliner in, right? So Monday would be Steve Aoki, Tuesday would be Avicii, Wednesday Laid Back Luke, Thursday Calvin Harris, so on and so on and so on. And I played probably about 14 or 15 times down there. So I had to put, different sets together because each one of those was either opening the room or direct support or different artists. You know what I mean? Like when I was opening for Paul Van Dyke, I got to play as deep as I really wanted to because he was more trance, but all the other guys are all the top 40, top 100 EDM, but I'm the type of person that I don't like to play the same things. So I'd like to go back in and switch my sets up. As far as length, the most I've ever played is out is 2 hours. and I don't really plan sets. I put, 20, 30 tracks in a crate, and I have my few that I start off with to kind of create that vibe.
Yeah.
But then from there, it's freestyle.
Yeah. We can refer back to, are we, well, so where there was a after party episode, where we talked about me preparing for, the Paul Oakenfold show back in September. And then we just recently recorded
It just
that
published.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's just published where we did a recap of that. So the short version is it's pretty much what Tony just said for me, is that I put together a folder of what my main stuff is, like what's the main idea here, so it could be 20, 30, 40, 50 tracks. Am I going to play all those? Probably not, but like it gives me a solid backbone of where am I returning back to if I get too far off the beaten path. And then I'll have
a security playlist.
Right.
Yeah.
and then I'll have like 2 or 3 other folders of, okay, if then else, right? So if the crowd is feeling this, then I can go here. If they're not, then I can come back to the main list, or I can go over here to this other list. And each one of those will probably have 10, 15, 20 tracks each in those. So am I going to play all that? No, but it gives a pretty rough idea of, how I'm going to take things in certain directions. But as I put a lot of thought into, what is my role in each show? What's the experience that we're trying to get to? I go for a lot of themes that, I'm probably way overthinking them. So like if I'm picking out tracks because they've got, some heady or some trippy type of like lyrics or samples or things like that, and just things to kind of play around with people's minds, or play around with their uninhibited states, and depending on where you're at. So I put a lot of crazy thought into that stuff. All of my mixes that I've ever put out, like demos and demo CDs and stuff like that, it's always been like a full on, like I'm trying to tell a story. So it's not like I just pulled out 12 or 15 tracks and just went to town. It's always I'm putting these things together in very intentional ways. The longest that I can't say for sure that I've ever planned out a long set. When I was very early on, I play, as a young DJ, I when I very first started out, I would plan out entire set list. I'm playing for an hour. This is what I'm playing. I can't deviate from that. But as you mature and you get into reading crowds and being more dynamic, I can't say that I ever planned a Trip Turlington or Digital Psychosis set like that. But going back to the point that you made, David, for a mobile gig or something like that, or especially a wedding, I mean, you have to plan those types of things out. So,
yeah.
And Mo, he's gone way above and beyond. Like he's taken it down to a science of even asking the question, what do you not want me to play? And stuff like that. So
he gives his clients a questionnaire ahead of time, which is a really good idea.
Yep.
All right. Next up, we have one coming from our friend B-Funk, who was recently on the show. He wants to know, when do you upgrade your gear? When it breaks? When a new version comes out? Or in other words, what motivates you, being forced or enticed? When do you upgrade your gear? I would say when you can, not when you want to.
Yeah. I was going to say, for me, it's a matter of when FOMO and affordability kind of yeah, the supply demand curve, but one is FOMO and the other one is affordability. So I mean, there I've always got a big wish list of stuff that I would love to have, but I prioritize it based on what problem am I trying to solve by upgrading. So yeah. I do tend to hold on to stuff a little bit more longer, because the stuff that we, a lot of this stuff is not cheap. So, unless there's just some functionality that is going to drastically improve my workflow, or it's integral to how I play going forward. I tend to hold on to stuff. Like I've got DDJSZ over here. I've thrown it around about, in my head about selling it and upgrading to something, even like that Denon all-in-one and a standalone piece. And I've thrown it around. I've thrown all of that around. But at the end of the day, like my SZ still works with my record box license. So, I can still play on that just like I would, or very similarly like I would on a Nexus setup in a club. So there's no real need for me to go out and spend that kind of money. So, eventually I'll upgrade when that happens. Affordability and FOMO, crosses over.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would jump in there on is I agree. I hold on to stuff for quite a long time. I played on a Control S4 for like 1.5 million years because I had no real reason to upgrade. I think most people upgrade before they reach the limits of the hardware. So I draw a lot of parallels to cars, right? I'm a car guy, and it's like I could go and pay the premium for a brand new car that nobody else has touched with all the options, or I can wait an iteration or two and really get the one that I want that's going to serve my needs and really learn it in and out, whether that means actually buying used or buying the previous model. For example, I bought XDJ 1000s, the Mark I version, because they work in tractor HID mode, which Tony likes to use, which I like to use sometimes. And so I knew it would be functional for that. The Mark IIs don't support that tractor. Plus they were cheaper. Plus I could get them refurbed. So, I do that whole analysis thing. Like, is it worth it for me to buy this? And what's the way I can get the best deal out of it? Should I look at eBay? Or should I whatever? So I do all that. The one thing that I have determined just kind of as a personal choice that I've decided I'm not going to sell my techs ever, unless I'm replacing them with other techs, I guess. Same. So
you can see mine.
Yeah, I can see yours in the background there.
Yeah, I've owned these since 1998. And they were beat up and all of that stuff. So I think it was probably 5 years ago. I tore them apart. I had them powder coated, and I totally redid the all the LED lighting and internally grounded. I did all of the things to them. And that's when because I kicked around selling them as well for a while. But once I did all of that, then I was like, nope, these are mine. They're not going anywhere.
All right. Next one is from, I think this is our final one. This comes from our friend DJ Serrato. How long do we plan on being DJs? And when are you guys throwing a PDJ party? So we'll do the last part first. Throwing a passionate DJ party. So the last time we did that in an official capacity was probably the 1 year anniversary. So 2015, I think we called it 2014 was the 1 year anniversary. 14 or 15 anyway. So it's been a while. But this is something that behind the scenes that I've been poking Tony about a little bit, like, hey, are you interested? Do you want to help me throw a passionate DJ event?
Really?
No pressure.
There's been whispers, but only whispers. So we have some ideas, but it has to be the right reason, and we have to give Tony a good reason to do it because he books a million different shows, and so we've got to make sure it's worth his time, worth our time, and something that's kind of in brand for passionate DJ that makes DJs feel special in some kind of way. So we've got some ideas kicking around, but nothing official yet.
We will make that happen.
I guess I just assumed he meant like a club night or something.
People that see this awesome studio can only see this corner, but it's a really big room that we could put a good amount of people in to do a small little.
That's right.
Better
just saying.
I was gonna say, I think
cover and take out an insurance policy.
Right. I think how many times have we talked about doing boiler room in your studio? So
yeah, we're definitely gonna. That's another point. We're definitely gonna be doing some more live mixes and stuff like that. People are asking us why don't you ever play? We want to see you play. We want to see other mixes, and we've got a great setup for it now. So
yeah,
we're definitely going to do more actual live things.
Excited. I can't wait for it.
How long do we plan on being DJs, fellas? We'll end on this note.
As long as I can stand and hear. Well, actually, I don't even have to stand. As long as I can hear.
Yep. I mean, that's good friend of In the Groove. His name is Don. He went by Dr. Trance. He was out of Toronto. And I mean, that guy, I mean, he had to have been 70 something by the time he passed away, just within the last couple of years. And I mean, he ran One Groove Radio, all of that stuff. I mean, he's where we got the idea for doing boat parties down in Cincinnati, where we rent out the river boats with the paddles and all that, and we put 200, 300, 400 people on boats and do shows down there. He's the one we got the idea from, because they would do that in Toronto and go out on the lake. So, you know, I mean, my good friend Jason, his mom, she's been playing. You know, she didn't even learn until she was into her 50s or 60s. Like, so, you know, for me, I just, I mean, as long as it's still got me, and as long as I can still hear and the music speaks to me, and people will give me the opportunity to play for them, I'm in it.
When Tony said, "As long as I can hear," I almost said, "This has been the Passionate DJ podcast." That's such a good ending line.
Right.
I mean, really,
Trip ruined it.
No. I do have more to say on it, but it was just such a good. I mean, that's a great way to put it, because
right.
One great thing about being a DJ nowadays, and this is kind of my hobby horse as of late. There's so many different ways you can get involved in DJing now. So you can do it. You can do it in your garage or your basement and set up a camera and live stream. You can build a brand doing that. You can play out places. You can, there's so many different options. Even you just throw up Facebook Live or something. And so, and a lot of what I get out of DJing has only part of it is the performance to an audience, if that makes sense. So a lot of times I just go out to my decks and I play and get lost in my own head and get lost in my own music and do this for its own sake. So for as long as that's fulfilling something in my heart, I'm going to keep doing that. And the nice thing about it is, even if I'm, I have back problems, I've got all kinds of, issues like that. And if it gets to the point where I can't go out there and play a 3-hour set or go on the dance floor for hours at a time, I still have DJing. It's not going anywhere. You know what I mean? And that's kind of, it's the beautiful thing about it, is I can always get lost in this music. And just like Tony said, as long as even if I have to sit,
I mean, take into consideration, Marshmello just played in front of 3 million people that weren't even in front of him.
That's right.
In the middle of a video game. So
that's right.
There's always going to be an audience. And,
right.
All right, fellas. Well, I guess that's a good place to wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and hopefully we'll stay warm and safe here in our cozy homes and hide from the weather.
Right.
Tomato soup and grilled cheese.
I was going to say, I'm literally watching the snow just pound.
All right, fellas. Well, this has been fun. Thank you so much. Keep on spinning, and this has been the Passionate DJ Podcast.
Easy.
See you guys.
Claim the camera back. Hey, stop that.
It doesn't make it click when I turn the mic on and off, does it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's a mute. You can click in the window.
Oh, that's right. There's a mute on the screen.
Yeah. And 3, 2, 1.